All right, guys, we are here. We are live. Welcome to a new Poker Live podcast. I'm obviously not in my usual location today. I'm currently at the Poker Awards in Los Angeles. It was a very late night last night, and I'm currently eating Mexican food and getting ready for one of my favorite type of events, which is a all-male three-way. And my guests today are, of course, podcast favorite Jason Moe, and another one of the favorites of the podcast, Remko. Rinkema, I think that's how I actually say his last name. But for those who haven't been following, recently these two have been getting a little back and forth on Twitter. Remko said, let's do a podcast together, come on my pod. Jason was like, let's go on Joey's pod. More back and forth took place. Jason was on the podcast this week, said some things. So now here we are, man. I'm not sure what's going to happen here, but let's get started. So welcome to the podcast, boys. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, man. I saw Jason lube up his forearm, so I'm not sure what that means, but it's exciting.
I think you know what it means.
Okay, so I guess, Jason, why don't you go ahead and start? Since you seem like you got the biggest issue with things that are happening after the Phil Galfond piece and with the poker news stuff, why don't you go ahead and start, and then Remko, you can go from there, and then let's get after it, man.
Okay, yeah, sure. So I talked about this last week on your podcast, and I'm back here again talking about it some more. But Poker News released a piece where Phil Galfond had a issue with a person in one of the games he was playing where he supposedly loaned $250,000 to him for some reason, and that money didn't get returned, or only $50,000 of it got returned, and he was allowed to basically write an expose onto like a claim as to about this person, and then use it as a front to say like, hey, we should start outing scammers and stuff like that. And I took major issue to that because I feel like personal beefs shouldn't be discussed or illustrated within the poker media. And then we talked about it some more, but the other issues I had with it were that I don't believe that Phil Galfond, his intent of this article was actually to get other people to out a bunch of scammers, because he only outed the one guy who scammed him, who might return the money if this thing becomes more and more public, as opposed to the other people who he knows are scammers. But also we talked a little bit about how Poker News was given more evidence of other stories of people within the poker community that were more well-known, I guess, that did probably worse things, but also things that affect more people, and they chose to ignore all those issues. So it just shows how selective, or how, I guess, political the process is to get one of these pieces published in your favor.
So before getting into the specifics of all of this, and I'll respond to everything, that's no issue at all, I do want to say that I'm not Poker News. I am not a full-time employee. I'm speaking for myself here today. This is just my personal opinion. And we all know Poker News is an affiliate website that gets paid by various third parties to cover their events and also to write about certain news topics. And on top of that, content is being made as well that is not included in those deals. As an example, I want to mention the Poker News podcast and my own podcast specifically, because on those we always have free range to say whatever we want, and I already know other things you're going to bring up, and I can say it right now that we discussed those things at length, all of those, on the podcast during the World Series of Poker, and also in other certain scenarios. We've even discussed your situation with the chips in Barcelona, to give an example, on the podcast as well. Anyway, that's besides the point. The thing is that Poker News is an affiliate website, so the stuff that we cover, EPTs and other events where we are sponsored by Poker News, or sorry, by PokerStars, that is for us a tough situation to be in, because you are there to market the product, so that's the EPT in certain cases, and that's probably the easiest example, but you're also trying to report on what is going on, you're trying to report on the stuff that's happening. So for us, that's also sort of a thin line sometimes, and whenever someone asks me, what is your job, I will never tell them that I'm a journalist, because I feel like I'm not in a position to say that, because just as well as I do, that in order to call yourself a journalist, there are a lot more criteria you have to tick off, and in a lot of situations that it's just not the case. It's not possible. We're all trying to make a living here, so we have to make certain concessions in that sort of way. So that's one thing that I wanted to say right off the bat. When it comes to the Galfon article, I find it really funny that you almost act as if writing the article is worse than scamming someone for money. And
it's not a comparison. How is this a comparison? What are you talking about?
But you are all up in arms about the actual article being written compared to being up in arms about people getting scammed. And this is one thing that strikes me the most, is the fact that after having been in this industry for many, many years, having seen many people get scammed, having seen a lot of big transaction happen, having seen people overselling for themselves, having seen swaps that weren't honored, like all sorts of stuff, and they never get discussed publicly because people are always hoping to get paid in the end. And the fact that Galfon has given up on this debt to make a stand and say, okay, I want to out this guy specifically.
That's not true at all. He does not give up on the debt to make a stand. That's just complete nonsense. In fact, I would say that he's more likely to get paid back now than he was before.
But the thing is that
that's like directly contradictory of what you just said. Like what you're talking about makes absolutely no sense.
That's not true, because
everyone in the poker community is either. Go ahead. Sorry,
he would out the other people as well. That you allegedly said that he allegedly is owed money by other people as well. If he felt that there was no chance of him getting paid back and the chance would increase by outing them, I'm pretty sure that he would do that as well. And
but the chance decreases if he outs. You understand? There's a separate subgroup of people. Either your chance increases or your chance decreases. Let me give you two examples. Your chance would decrease if you're owed money by a professional player who requires a stake or requires people to trust him with money in order for him to build up a bankroll so he gets to the point where he can pay you back, right? So if you kill his reputation immediately, your equity of getting paid back just goes down to almost nothing. So those are the people he's not outing. However, this guy, it's not like he's a professional player. He's a recreational player that just got into these big games. So he's more likely to get paid back because he's probably a little bit more known outside of poker than in poker. So to have his name tarnished, he probably doesn't want that, and is probably more likely to resolve this rather than let it settle.
So you think that this guy should not be outed and nobody should ever get outed and everything should be handled in-house with the risk of more people getting scammed along the way? Just to give an example, the Shaquille, whatever the guy's name is from Canada, that story that broke right after because of this piece Galfon wrote, that guy would not have been outed, or at least not right now, if it wasn't for that piece. So how can you sort of defend keeping it in-house with the risk of more people getting scammed, as opposed to perhaps stepping on a slippery slope, which is some words you used, and I think that you're not wrong in using those words because it is a slippery slope. But on that same side, you can also then help other people not getting scammed, help perhaps more people getting paid back, and also scare off scammers in the future, knowing that there is a much bigger chance they will get outed at some point. If we always protect the scammers under the sort of, I don't know, there's sort of a cover-up in a situation where scammers are not being outed because people always have hope that they're going to get paid back. If that's going to be the case forever and ever and ever, then scammers can always keep scamming because there's never that big of a risk for them, because they can always borrow from one guy.
Let me ask you a personal question. Have you ever been scammed by someone within the poker community?
I mean, it's for a very small amount, but I've one time made a transaction, online money for cash, for $500 with a dealer at the World Series of Poker that I thought was a friend of mine, and that person then took the high road and basically I never saw him again. So it's not the same in that sort of sense, but for me, $500 was a big deal at the time. And
okay, because everything you're saying is just. It's like you're on this holy crusade to prevent people from getting scammed or to stop.
No, I'm on a crusade to make it more known that this happens in the poker world. Don't put words in my mouth like that. It's not a holy crusade. It is just a situation where you know as well as I do that this poker world is not filled with fairy tales and roses. There's a lot of bad shit happening as well. So if this is one step in the right direction of somehow making that a smaller problem, then I'm all for it.
Okay, so first off, how is it going to be a smaller problem if people know that people are scamming? Do you think scammers care?
If scammers are always going to be able to scam because they know that it will never become public, so they can borrow from one guy to pay off the next guy, and they can always keep putting their schemes out there, if somehow those people are now, more worried that they get outed because there is a chance that articles are get written about them, then I'm pretty sure that's going to be a smaller problem at some point, or at least it's not going to make the problem any worse.
Okay, so you think that every time there's like a small debt or a debt with someone that has not been paid, it should be outed to the public before the guy has ability to make restitution on the payment?
No, I'm saying that you have to use discretion.
Then what's the point of this? What does that even mean?
I'm pretty sure you know what it means. I'm pretty sure you know what it means. You have to use, in every single situation, and that goes to everything in life, you have to use discretion. You have to think, all right, is this a reasonable situation where X, Y, and Z are never going to happen, and can I then assume that this debt is so-called debt? If you and all your high stakes friends know that there's a guy out there scamming people, but you have an edge on them in some sort of game and you still keep winning money from them, not outing that person, and at the same time he's stealing from other people, then I think that's a bad situation as an example of something that's possible in the world of poker with so much money going around.
But okay, so going back to this Galfond article, do you think Galfond knows any people like that?
If he does, and we see, I don't know Galfond personally.
Yes or no question. Do you think he knows any people like that?
I don't know that. I don't know Galfond.
A lot of high stakes, right?
I've never played high stakes. I'm only friendly with a bunch of high stakes guys on a level where we talk when we're at tournaments. I'm not that familiar with those type of stories. So I'm just talking from my perspective, from a personal perspective of hearing about people getting scammed a lot, hearing about money borrowing, and
that's the problem with everything, because I interact with people on a day-to-day basis, which involves a lot of transactions. And the one thing that the article doesn't tell you is that essentially possession of your money, the money you have, is like 9/10 of the law. You really shouldn't trust anyone, because first of all, you claim that because these scammers are getting outed, they're more likely to pay back money. That doesn't make any sense. I would say that the chat guy is less likely to pay back anyone.
That's not what I said at all. That's not what I said at all.
Are you kidding? You said that like 5 minutes ago.
I said that if these stories are out there...
Wait, can we bet on this? Can we bet that you said that?
Hold on, Jason, hold on a second. Okay, so let me just kind of bring this to a middle here. So you're saying, Jason, that you don't think that article just should be written. You don't think that article should be written by Phil unless he's going to out all the scammers? So I feel like you guys sort of agree.
Let's go back to specifically the Phil argument. Right, that article shouldn't be written because it's a personal beef between one person and another. They claim that, the other party didn't respond, therefore there's like an assumption that he's guilty and the story was able to be published. But in reality, personal beefs within the poker community shouldn't be outed on news sources.
I think that if you take into account the fact that Phil Galfond's reputation is, for as far as a lot of people know,
it doesn't matter whose reputation it is.
Of course it matters.
No, it doesn't.
Of course it does matter.
I've been poker long enough where I know that reputation at the end of the day doesn't really mean that much if someone doesn't have money or someone does have money. There's plenty of people who have been regarded highly in the poker community, as higher, if not higher, than Galfond, that have turned out to be thieves.
Hey, you can lose your reputation. I'm all for that.
So at one point you have a quote-unquote good reputation within the poker community, and there's no real threshold as to bright line as to what that means, then you're allowed to do these pieces where you get to air your personal beefs with other people in a public news source.
The Poker News editor-in-chief, Donnie Peters, uses his discretion with regards to publishing this or not. And on top of that, you making these silly comparison between Poker News and the New York Times makes no sense to begin with, because it's not the same sort of media outlet. There's plenty of media outlets there are plenty of media outlets out there that you could call maybe biased, or they have some sort of agenda. But from this point of view, in poker, the best thing we have is our discretion, and the best thing we have is our reputation. So if Galfond comes to Poker News with a story like this, and the way he wrote it, and the way they discussed it, and then people decided to publish that, I think that under those circumstances, that you can publish an article like this where Phil Galfond is the person saying it. I think there are not many people in the poker world that can do this, but if Phil Galfond says this, and you can say whether or not you believe that he has a larger goal in mind of outing other people, that's up to you to decide, but I think that it could have that effect. Whether or not that was his goal, that's a different discussion, but it can have that effect where other people can some sort of can get outed more because it is one story is out there from someone as reputable as Phil Galfond. Because
okay, so just going back to this story, you're saying Phil Galfond going to write this article because his reputation is better than the other party in this article, right? We've never heard of this other party, and we assume Phil Galfond is reputable.
Yeah.
Okay, so does that mean that there's a threshold between, like, say, a no-name and, like, a high-level professional that gives a high-level professional the ability to make these claims as if they were fact?
Like I said, that's on a case-to-case basis. You have to use your discretion.
Well, we're looking at this case.
It's not a blanket. You can't make a blanket statement on something that is as touchy as a money scam / loaning money and stuff. You can't make.
Okay, another example. Sean Deeb and Matt Clance reached out to attempt to do the exact same thing and got denied. They were told to, like, write a blog about it or something. Yeah. How is that fair to them?
So this is
me. Are you saying that they're not as reputable? Or
let me respond to that. That is the editor's discretion, not mine. I'm not running Poker News. If it was up to me, I would have probably ran that story.
Okay, here's another example. What about during the summer where tons, I think like 2 or 3 high-stakes pros came to Poker News and gave them the Brian Hastings story of how he was playing high-stakes mixed games.
See, that's funny you mentioned that, because I actually tried speaking to Brian Hastings about this, and I also tried speaking to some pros. We ended up having about an hour-long discussion on our podcast about this topic. We ended up not writing a story, and I was trying to think back of why that didn't happen, because I was trying to piece together this story. There was nobody that reached out to me with proof. There was no sort of, like you said, like Skype logs or something like that. There was a thread on 2+2 going on. We had a very long discussion on our podcast about it, and in the end there was no article written about it because we probably had a reason for that. I can't recall precisely what happened there, but I know
for a fact that Skype logs were given of him basically saying this, but also other people confirming. But like this story also affects more people because he's dealing with quite a few people within the poker community, but also he's also making like bracelet bets with a bunch of people as well at that time.
Joey, have I spoken to you about this Hastings situation, and have I versed how I feel about that, and have I tried to get to the bottom of the story? Because I spoke to you personally, Joey.
Oh, I mean, 100%, definitely. Yeah, me and you had a conversation during the series about this, and yeah, you talked about it. You sort of asked me, you're talking about potentially wanting to put a story out there, but and I think as you said, there wasn't some proof. I think there was maybe a Skype chat at some point in time put out there on 2+2, whether it was, obviously 100% an actual thing is, debatable. I'm pretty sure it wasn't.
The thing that blows my mind here is that like the threshold of proof for that story is somehow the same as the threshold for proof for the Galfond story, where the threshold of proof for the Galfond story was just Phil Galfond just saying, yeah, this happened.
Well, like I said, we discussed it in depth on the podcast, and we definitely spent a lot of time.
You can say that all you want, but like the point is I know what happened. They brought the story to you guys, and you guys declined writing a story about it.
Show me then, because I didn't get any sort of extra information. I was digging around myself trying to get more information on this. So you can try to discredit us as much as you want, and I know you love being angry at Poker News, but I really tried, and with a lot of people this summer, to write as many due diligence stories out there. Like, have you seen how we covered the Heads Up Scammer story? Like, have you seen how we dove into that and how we wrote a story on that? Like, and like Joey just said right now, I was trying to get more information on the Hastings story out there. And with the stuff that I've learned in this past year, writing editorial stuff, I probably would have chased even harder after Hastings. But like, we all learned from that. But we did have a lot of discussion about Hastings on our podcast, and you can go back and listen to that. And we were not like easy on him. And as Joey knows, I'm not a fan of Hastings whatsoever, based on all the stuff that he did.
Okay, I mean it's still like you can say that all you want, but the point is like nothing was ever published under this, and also like the threshold of proof there was like extremely high, meaning like multiple people were talking about it, multiple people had Skype logs, multiple people had information. I mean, he even came out and said it was him to like some people he was playing.
So it's very clear to me that in the world of poker, where there's a lot of stuff happening, a lot of bad stuff happening as well, and that it would be ideal to live in a world where we can publish everything, and also in a world where we always get the story from all the sources and we can talk to everyone and stuff like that as well. But But that's just not the case right now. And you even said it as well yourself, is that it's all about money when it comes to being able to write certain things. And this is no sort of connection with the Hastings story, but in regards to a lot of other stories. And I mean, I wish there was independent and unbiased reporting on a lot of different things, but that's not just poker. That's also with regards to politics and a whole bunch of other stuff.
Sure.
So,
I mean, so at this point, we can agree that Poker News isn't like really a news site; it's more of an affiliate site, and
yeah, but you know
its opinions are biased.
You-
Well, of course I know that.
But why do you keep acting as if Poker News is pretending to be something that they're not?
I'm not acting like that.
Have you read your own tweets?
I'm tweeting it because of the integrity of like this article itself, and I explain why.
But you also never go to the lengths of trying to find another site to write it for you. Why don't you go after Poker Listings or Bluff or Card Player? Why don't you
write what for me?
Why don't you write your own articles? And why is it always from your point of view Poker News' fault that something is not done the way you like to have it seen done?
Most of my beefs previous to this, independent of this article, have been from Poker News live reporting, because Poker News is the only squad doing the live reporting. And the smaller thing is that they don't know how to report hands correctly, but it's sort of irrelevant. The bigger thing is that when the tournament staff fucks up, or when the tournament staff does something wrong, or where there's like money stolen, Poker News sort of covers that up.
First of all, you claiming something as crazy as we get 50% of the hands wrong is one of the most idiotic things I've ever heard. Of course, there are not everyone in the world of live reporting is a superstar blogger and understands poker the way some of the better bloggers do. But if we talk about sort of slandering from your point of view with regards to Galfond and sources and stuff like that, then you're doing the same thing with regards to the people that actually work for Poker News and try to get stuff right. I mean, we cover tens of thousands of hands of live reporting per year, and I know for a fact that we make mistakes, because I make mistakes as well all the time. But the thing is that you can criticize Poker News all you want, but spreading stories like this makes absolutely no sense to me, because we don't get 50% of the hands wrong. I mean, you are a well-respected top high-stakes player.
From the sample size I get, where I look at hands and I see something that I would disagree with, and I ask someone involved in the hand, like, what are they doing there? I would say over 50% of the time, they said the hand's misreported.
Well, that's
like,
wrong.
I don't.
Okay, no.
How would that be wrong? How would that be wrong when I ask someone who's in the hand? Like, I don't know if a hand's reported correctly or incorrectly until I talk to someone in the hand, right? Because I'm not there to watch it.
So out of all those tens of thousands of hands per year, you think you have a good grasp on what 50% is, and you are a professional poker player.
Size, yeah.
So basically, if I see you play two hands badly, and I ask you about it, and all of a sudden you're a shitty poker player because you misplayed two hands, you're a really good, well-respected, high-stakes player, and of course you're going to make mistakes.
So the likelihood of me being a bad player increases the more bad hands I play. As the likelihood of you being bad at your job increases the more hands you misreport. And for the past 2 or 3 years, it's been a constant. I don't even know why we're arguing about this.
I do, because this is something that affects me personally, because I've tried to make so much effort to do good reporting, and I'm speaking for myself personally. I talk to pros all the time when there's a big hand going on. I want to give an example for the PCA where I wrote down a hand with Rinkema in the 100K, and I was looking at my notes, and I remember this because I texted him afterwards, and something just didn't feel right about the bet sizing pre-flop. So I texted Brendan and I said, hey man, the sizing seems off on my notes. I must have made a mistake. And then he said, oh, there were two limpers before. That's why he raised bigger, and I missed that because I arrived on the scene when someone 3-bet him. I believe it was from the button. So that goes to show that that's how much I care about getting this right. And whenever I get something wrong and someone tells me about it, I apologize and I try to correct that. And I think I can speak for a lot of the bloggers that they also do that. So this is one of the things that drives me crazy, how you can just go off and get angry on Twitter and say these things while, I personally have no sort of energy to defend against all the negative stuff that you're trying to say each and every single time. But I did want to say my bit about this, because when you won APPT Seoul, we tried our best to cover that as good as we can. I'm sure there were some mistakes in there, but you never said anything about that. Also, I congratulated you after you won because you played an amazing tournament. You crushed that final table. Yeah, so you have every single chance to talk to someone at Poker News about whatever is bothering you about the live updates every single time you go to a live event. And if you want to say something about it, then say it when I'm there, because you've never said a word to me in person, even though you know that I work for Poker News and I cover live updates, and I'm the one guy who always covers the biggest buy-in events. So I'm usually the one who is on the big tournaments that are on the big stage, and I really, really want to
That's
make
like
sure
completely
that I get it
irrelevant.
right.
What am I supposed to say? Like, get the hands correct?
Hold on, boys. Hold on, boys. All right, Jason. So Remko actually makes a decent point. So, obviously, when you have a lot of issues with Poker News, you normally take to Twitter. But I know you also do travel to a lot of events. You were just in the Aussie Millions. So I guess why don't you choose to take some of these issues you have with the live reporting or with any other thing that Poker News does? Why don't you ever take it up with them in person instead of going on Twitter? Like, why do you choose to use Twitter as your main vehicle for sort of voicing these opinions you got about them?
Because if I have a personal conversation with anyone within Poker News, it's just going to be between me and them, right? Whereas a lot of these issues affect a lot of people within these tournaments. And like the main issues I had, well, before the Galfine article, the main issues I had with Poker News were that first, the hands were misreported, but second, that when a tournament makes like egregious errors in the way the tournaments run, or like, for example, if like money is missing or chips are missing, or something happens that makes the tournament staff look bad, like those things are sort of completely ignored by the live reporting staff.
See, I can say about that it pains me sometimes in certain situations that we are restricted by the way this business works and the way live reporting works. Because like you said as well, these are important things that need to be highlighted. And over the years, I've covered plenty of stories that were very important, that were put out there. But there's also cases where stuff wasn't written because of, like you said as well, there's sponsors involved that don't want certain things to be done. But then let me ask you this question. In situations where very bad stuff happens and you're a part of it, or you know enough about it to speak your piece about it, why not approach one of the 50 people on Twitter that have reputable websites that also write about poker? There's so many bloggers out there that would happily write a story where Jason Moe says something X, Y, and Z about a tournament, because you have that opportunity. You are a big enough name to reach out to anyone you want on Twitter and say, hey guys, this is really bothering me. Poker News is not writing it, but I want to get this information out there. You've never done that before, yet you always love to hate on Poker News, and you have to understand what the model is here. And I think you very well do understand the model, but it's probably just easier to hate than to actually be proactive and trying to get the story out there.
Of course I understand the model. I explained the model in the last podcast as to how it works, but it doesn't preclude the fact that Poker News is the only person there doing the live reporting, right?
Yeah, but
there's stuff that happens on the tournament floor during this time that can't be picked up by other news sources because you guys have exclusive access.
But you are the news source then.
Why am I the news source?
No, I think okay. So Jason, I think Remko's saying is that in that situation, if Poker News isn't going to put out that specific topic or what just happened, you as someone who is at the tournament and you see this happen, you can then reach out to a different source and say, hey, this is what I saw, and tell them about it, and then they'll write it. So in a situation like that, why not do that for you?
I guess I could do that, mostly because I can't really be bothered like writing an article or explaining the whole situation.
You're not really writing it. I mean, if it's a big deal, and obviously if you don't like that Poker News doesn't put it out, I think that's a pretty decent point to reach out to somebody. I mean, even me or someone like the other sites, the Poker Listings, Poker Update. Reach out to them and be like, hey, can you guys write about this? And if Poker News is going to write about it because they have a conflict of interest, well, then I'm pretty sure other sites would write about it, and that way these stories get out there, and it sort of solves two issues, it sounds like, that you have.
Yeah, I guess that's true, but the main problem I have is that there's always going to be a conflict of interest within the articles, and there's always going to be a conflict of interest with the live reporting. And the conflict of interest that happens is extremely negative for the players that are using Poker News or consider Poker News as a legit news source.
But you can also not say, like, I know that I gave you that leeway by saying that there are stories that we don't cover. But we do, and let me just speak for myself. I do cover a lot of big stories in poker that are not like all roses and shiny for whoever else is out there. Because if you listen to the podcast that we did about the PokerStars VIP changes, I ripped them apart about the changes they made and the way they handled those changes. That is also something that we're doing. We're not shying away from everything. there are just situations during live updates where we are specifically paid by the sponsor of the event to cover it, where there are things that just aren't that easy to write about. But then again, at the same time, we also still write about a lot of other things that do happen, that do go wrong. Like I can send you 50 links of hands we wrote where
Do you
stuff went
think
wrong.
that as part of the live reporting team that covers any of these events, there's some due diligence by you guys if something predatory happens from the tournament staff for that to be reported, or no?
I mean, we have reported on a lot of those things. Like the situation you mentioned with Aussie Millions, I wasn't at Aussie Millions that year, so I have no sort of information on that sort of case. But I do know that in a lot of cases we do report stuff. We do report if bad things happen. We do report, usually if chips go missing or if something bad happens, and we do report these sort of things that might make the company look bad that it's about. So there are just certain situations where it may not happen, and I'll cop to that just being the case. But on the other hand, I want to say that for every one that doesn't get written, I think 10 do get written, and that's also something that's easy
I
to.
don't think that's true. I think for every one that gets written, maybe 10 don't get written.
I mean, I don't think that's true at all, but that's just a personal opinion from your point of view.
I mean, okay, so you've already agreed to the fact that because Poker News is sponsored by these tournament poker stops, a lot of like the negative things that happen within these poker tournaments can't be reported due to
Not a lot. No,
construction.
Not a lot. Like
a lot of the major things.
I don't think a lot of the major things get not reported. I think there's instances and cases where stuff doesn't get written, but I think the large majority of stuff does get written. And
okay, I would heavily disagree with that in terms of like my experience.
Link every time. I can send you a link every time we write about something negative if that makes you feel good.
The problem is I can't send you a link every time that something egregious happens and you don't write on it. And like the Aussie Millions example was an absurd example. Like 2 years ago, there was one table left, and the tournament floor did not know how many people got paid out. And I mean, there was like 2 Poker News reporters standing around this one table, and I say to one of them, "Hey, you should probably report this." And obviously, nothing gets reported.
And then you can take to whatever other source you want and make it into a story.
I did. I just posted on my Twitter, but I mean, it's
no. But I mean, seriously,
it's a good example of like what doesn't get reported. If you're down to one table and you have 2 reporters covering one table, and they can't cover the story that the entire table is complaining about the entire time.
See, you speaking for everything and all the time and using those sort of words, that is one thing that bugs me about you, because you're free to have your opinion, and I appreciate that someone is actually going out there to say what they think, but you can't just talk about everything in that sort of all-encompassing way, because that's just not the case. Like, I cover so many tournament days of tournaments throughout the year. I go to so many different events. Like the scope of that is just doesn't compare to the allegations of you saying everything and everybody and all those kind of things. Because let's just be real here. If you reach out to someone, they are going to write it because they think you're a reputable source. You wouldn't make shit up. You would tell like you see it, and then someone would write an article about that. I think that is definitely going to happen. And the same goes for a lot of high-stakes players that I see going around the tour. That's just a fact. It's a fact that would happen. But you've never done that because you much rather just have some sort of Twitter war or just act all negative and then post sushi photos again. Like, because it's much easier for you. Like,
that is true. That is much easier for me. And I'll probably continue doing that.
I mean, that's fine.
I'm not here to hype up or try to get my message across.
No, but you are saying there's no journalistic integrity in the world of poker. Well, then also cop to the other side of it, that you're doing nothing to change that, even though this is an industry that you should really care about. This is where you make your living. This is part of your livelihood as well. So why make an effort to criticize journalistic integrity, but then on the other hand, only want to criticize and not want to be part of a proactive solution to make it better?
Because I just simply don't care about a proactive solution.
Okay, cool. Well, then at least we know how you feel about things. That's good to know.
Right? I'm in poker, like I talked about before. I'm in poker for my own benefit, and everyone else is in poker for their own benefit, for the most part. And that's what I was talking about this Phil Galfond article. He's clearly doing this for his own benefit as opposed for the benefit of the community. But if he was doing it for the benefit of the community, he would out everyone he knows that's a scammer, not just an individual case, and then tell everyone else to out people that are scammers.
I mean, I think it's a step in the right direction. I'm not saying it's...
Also, going back to the article, did you see how it was written? It was written in a way where he doesn't even describe the financial transaction. He says he doesn't want to involve the other people involved, so he says something like, to make a long story short, I gave him $250,000, which obviously is not the extent of the story.
Okay, we can argue semantics over this for a very long time, but that's not going to make it any different. Like the
Oh no,
fact is,
sure it does. Sure it does, because he's allowed to write an op-ed, like from his point of view on a financial dispute with someone else. It's obviously going to make him look very good and the other party look very bad in this article, right?
okay, sure, whatever. But the thing is that in the world of poker, the larger issue at hand is the fact that scammers can go out there and scam as much as they want because there's no sort of first of all, in poker there's no governing body. There's nobody telling us what to do. We're all just dealing by stuff, but just talking to our friends and talking to people that we know and making sure can I lend this guy money? And then someone else says, yeah, sure you can, but maybe there's information that you don't know because it never gets outed. There's no policing. It's all self-policing. It's all about reputation, and the scare of being outed helps. You cannot deny that.
Sure, the scare of being outed helps, but why is this like a good thing? Why is that a good example? Like,
so,
why should we allow one individual to out someone?
It's not one individual. It's Phil Galfond.
What does that mean? Because he's Phil Galfond, he's allowed to do this?
I think that makes sense, though, because Phil Galfond, obviously there's people in poker, and I know what your point is that people have good reputations, and then they still fuck people over and scam. But, I mean, there are some people in poker who have these, like, exceptional reputations built over years of time on different multiple fronts, and I feel like with Phil, you know, he sort of does have a reputation where, you know, he could write something like that. I mean, I can understand. You can understand why they'd want to put that out there. I mean, it makes sense why they want to do it.
Yeah, I understand why they want to do it, but I was curious as to why it's not allowed for other people of the same level of integrity. I mean, and also, who are we or who is Poker News to judge the level or the reputation of a person in a financial dispute?
Yeah, but that's the same in every sort of media. That doesn't just apply to poker. Like
yeah, but other forms of media don't necessarily allow people to write op-eds where someone owes them money and they write like essentially 3 paragraphs as to like why this person's a bad person and why we should out people like this.
Yeah, but in other forms of media, there's also not people that we cover that lay on the bed with bricks of $50,000 laying around. Like, it's a completely different world.
I understand it's a completely different world, but we're talking about journalistic integrity, not like.
No, I'm saying that in this strange world that we operate in, there's a lot of weird stuff happening with large sums of money. So of course, this sort of story has no sort of meaning in the world of NASCAR compared to the world of poker because it's just a completely different world. Like it doesn't even compare. Like this is a unique situation. Of course, I don't like to be the guy having Phil Galfond approach me about a story like this. But the fact is that scammers are out there in the world of poker, and an article by someone whose name is Phil Galfond, who's arguably.
So you don't think that there's an issue with, or it's maybe poor journalistic integrity to take someone based only on their reputation and allow them to write something like this?
If you read Galfond's story and if you read the way it's written and then decide based on that, the way he wrote it and the allegations that he's making. And
okay, so the way I read it was he wanted to out this guy, but he didn't want to tell the whole story, and then he wanted to cover up his message by saying other people should out other people as well. I mean, that's the way I read it, because like the story of the transaction was not actually written in the article. In fact, he said, because other people were involved in this transaction, I don't want to out their names, so I'm just going to leave it at that.
All right. Well, I think that Galfond should also disclose that information if he can. Like, I'm not one to.
I mean, have you ever given or gotten a $250,000 loan?
Jason, come on. First of all, stop interrupting JMO for a bit.
No, this is like serious question. What?
Oh, this is a serious question?
Yeah.
This is like the internet troll you are to say something as dumb as this. But sure,
go ahead.
No,
I'm going somewhere. So this is a serious question. I assume you had never gotten or given a $250,000 loan, right?
Well, guess what? I never have.
Okay.
Are you happy now? Does this make you feel good that I don't have as much money as you do?
Do you think that if you asked, say, Phil Galfond for $250,000, he would give it to you? Probably not, right?
No,
right?
Of course not.
So there must have been some level of trust or understanding within the game he was playing or his circle of friends where this transaction happened, correct?
Sure.
Okay, so shouldn't that be explained within the article?
Have you been in similar situations?
Yes.
So what's your course of action?
Okay, so here's an example. Let's say the guy was they're playing a super high stakes game. Let's say the buy-in is $250,000. Let's say
It's
he's
still.
down 10
I'll
buy-ins.
let you tell your story, but it's still semantics. I'm much
It's
more
not
interested in.
semantics. It's not semantics. But anyways, let's say you're playing a game with this guy. He's the obvious spot at the table. He's tilting. He's down 10 buy-ins at this game, so let's say 2.5 million. He says, I want to I want to continue playing, but I don't have any more money. Can someone loan me money to keep the game going? Obviously, everyone at the table doesn't want to loan this guy money, and when they loan the money, there's like a non-zero chance there's a non-zero chance they get scammed for the money. But guess what? A lot of poker players in that spot, or maybe the whole table will. I've seen it in the past. The whole table will loan this guy money, knowing that there's a huge chance that money doesn't get paid back. So if that happens, or if there's this
So is that a reason? Is that a reason not to write it because there's a non-zero chance that he's not going to get paid back because of who the guy is?
Wait, sorry, say that again?
Because there's a non-zero chance of him getting paid back. Is that a reason?
No, I'm saying that going into this agreement, this is not like a bank loan or something. Like you treat it as if it's black and white. Whereas if you don't know the actual story as to why the $250,000 was handed over, besides the fact that Phil Galfond thinks this guy owes him money, then what's the point of the article itself?
Sure, it's a huge gray area when it comes to loaning money in poker and the reasons.
Okay, so then going more in depth than that, why wasn't Phil forced to explain the transaction he made, or like the reasons behind it, or who else was involved?
I did not write the article. I was not involved in this article.
Well, of course you didn't write it. Phil Galfond wrote the article, right?
But what I'm saying is, I didn't write the article. I wasn't involved in getting it published. I'm just giving my personal opinion on.
I mean, do you not see how this causes a bad precedent where someone can just write his opinion?
No, because that's not true. Not just someone can write an article. This was published from after doing due diligence and also making sure that.
What was the due diligence? That Phil Galfond is indeed Phil Galfond?
I think that's a pretty big thing in the world of poker.
So that's the due diligence. Phil Galfond, you're Phil Galfond. You get to write whatever you want.
Well, he didn't just write whatever he wanted. He wrote an article.
He did write whatever he wanted because he completely excluded the transaction or the details of the transaction.
Well, Jason,
why the money was given, why the money was given, stuff like that.
Jason, when I had Donnie on the podcast the other day, he mentioned that him and Phil communicated behind the scenes more, and Donnie saw enough proof, and that's why he allowed Phil to write the article. So I think that was Donnie's responsibility, or he felt like his responsibility to have that stuff explained to him instead of having to put something like that in the article.
Okay, and I mean, if Donnie wanted to do something about it, he should probably tell Phil to write that in the article, right? Like what exactly happened.
So do you think it's a bigger issue not to have that in there than to have a chance to somehow improve this community a little bit by making the thing of scamming, which is a big deal?
That's the only argument you really have here, and it's that we can shift into this gray area. We can throw out all journalistic integrity on stuff like this, as long as there's a small chance that we do something like the end justify the means, right? That if the poker world improves post this article, then if we get to that point, then the process doesn't matter at all.
I think the process does matter. I think that there's just certain situations where someone like Phil Galfond he is in the position to write an op-ed piece.
He's in the position to directly call someone out, call him a thief without taking it to court or anything like that. Just write an article. But then other people aren't. Well, would I be held under that level of trust or integrity or whatever you want to call it?
Depends what kind of story you come with, how it's worded, what's in there.
If I had a story that was the same as his, that I was playing a game and I loaned this guy $250,000 that most people haven't heard of, I would like to write a piece about how people like this all the time scam. So would I be allowed to do that?
So for me, speaking personally, I don't know at all about your reputation behind the scenes, so I cannot say that I would, because you've not been around as long as Galfond. You don't have your own.
This is the problem with reputation, though, because it's completely subjective.
Yeah, but
some people have good reputations, some people don't have good reputations.
It's part of life that your reputation is just something that will evolve over time, and that that just increases or decreases based on your actions.
Yeah, but that's not true at all. You're talking about reputation as it's an absolute thing, and it's the same from person to person. Meaning, someone may see your reputation as very good, whereas some other people may see your reputation as very bad. The same for me. Like
Joey,
reputation isn't like on a linear scale where
of
everyone
course
sees
not.
the person
But
as
I'm also not
high.
saying that. I'm saying that discretion was used to publish this article, and I think that we're just going back and forth on the same point here, Joey. So I don't know if there's more questions here, or if you have a take on this.
I mean, I feel like I'm not exactly even sure what you guys are, what the most important debate is here. So it sounds like JMO is basically saying you shouldn't put pieces up like that on Poker News. Remko thinks it's a good idea to put up something like that on Poker News if it's written by Phil. JMO thinks it probably shouldn't be written in general. So I think that's the main, back and forth. I don't necessarily think one of you guys is gonna convince
It definitely shouldn't be written based on the way it was written, and yeah, but it definitely shouldn't be written.
Yeah, and then I guess the second point that we briefly talked about was just about the idea of Poker News, reporting certain things or not reporting certain things, or just a hand history thing. I mean, I'm trying to think about what else were you guys really what else were you guys going back and forth on Twitter about? Like, was there anything else that was that was discussed between you two, or was this basically the main gist of things?
Well, okay, so I guess it's just going back to this article, but the first thing that was said to me was the article was done as an op-ed, and the person being accused had ability to respond and declined to respond, so there's no issue with only publishing one side of the story. Which I find pretty ridiculous, that if you're accused of something, not by a court of law or anything, but by someone else, they're allowed to publish a story, and if you don't respond, it's assumed you're guilty.
Well, I think that in this case specifically, if let me just say this, I wasn't involved in writing this article, so I don't know if Sammy read the article first or if Sammy was contacted asking what's up with the story. So I don't know how that went. But all I want to say is that if someone calls you and says, I'm going to write this article and it's going to say that you owe me $250,000, if you then say no comment, then you're opening yourself up to a whole lot of trouble in that sort of way. Even if you don't want to be a part of the story, if you don't want to comment at all, then you can say, I don't want to comment, but that's not true. Because then that's also going to get written if you say it like that. So
I mean, what if he has a lawyer that tells him not to comment? What if there's like a legal process behind all this?
Then that would have been stated in the article, I'm pretty sure. If this went through a lawyer or something like that, then that would have been stated in the article. But it didn't go through a lawyer because it went through the guy himself. Like, the thing is that
because he says no comment, and therefore like everything else is completely justified. Because like you would assume that an innocent party would defend themselves, right?
Wasn't that kind of how most media works, though, Jason? Is that there's a lot of articles written about different people where they don't comment on things.
Like, yeah, sure. But this is like one financial transaction where one party is accusing the other party of theft.
Do you think it's a lie, what Galfond wrote?
I don't think it's a lie. That's like completely irrelevant, though. My opinion as to whether it's a lie or whether it's not a lie is completely irrelevant.
I do think that this is not something that you're going to see a lot. I do think that this is something that is a special situation, and I think that it's going to have more positive effects in the long term than negative effects, and I think that's just sort of the end of it, because we're not going to agree on this, which is fine. But I just wanted to say that about this.
Well, why is this a special situation besides like, or compared to the other stories that you've declined that seem like?
I didn't decline anything. I am not Poker News. Remember that.
Okay, fair enough.
I think that, I think this was a special situation because it was Phil that wrote it. Like Remko said, Remko, he isn't Poker News. Like, he isn't deciding what's getting written on there. He puts out content that goes to different sources, Poker News being one of them. So. But Remko, on your side of things, I mean, was that sort of the main? I guess did we cover the main topics that you two, sort of had back and forth about?
Yeah, no, I think we had a good.
I think we covered it.
I think we had a good grown-up conversation about it, which is totally fine. I just hope that the next time if something is bugging Jason and he sees me in person, he's going to come up to me and tell me instead of going back to his room and tweeting about it. Like, I hope that sort of thing is something of the future instead of this endless sort of mud throwing on the internet, which to me is just childish, but that's just me.
Well, let me go read a couple comments in the chat here. We got PLP, Pussy Loving Pertouche says, I think the main point JMO is trying to make, but not sufficiently, is that it doesn't matter whether Galfon is telling the truth or not. Poker News should not be in the business of judging reputations. And although Galfon is about as high in poker reputation as you can get, there's other people with great reputations who are scum behind the scenes the media doesn't know about.
Yeah, but that's also on the players to make us more aware of that, because I feel like in this industry, which is small and tight-knit, I know a lot of players, and if they come to me with a big story on something, then I will either find a way to get it written, or I'll write it myself. So there's always certain ways with this where we can sort of improve or make things better, or I don't know, write stories that have to be written if things are being done about it. Because I'm also a public person in a way where you can always reach out to me, you can always find me, you can always start a discussion with me about something if it's really bothering you. So I feel like that is something that should also be done in the future to make this industry more professional and to make more stories come out of things that people disagree on.
I feel like that's not true, though. I feel like a lot of stories are. I feel like a lot of stories are presented, and they sort of just get shoved under the rug.
What are you even saying? You're just making allegations based on nothing.
Okay, here's an example. Earlier this week, I think it came out that Sorrell was multi-counting on some account, and there's sufficient evidence about it. And I think, the information was presented, and then
not to me. So that's all. This is the point I'm making. I'm talking about me personally.
Okay, well, I don't know what is and what isn't presented to you, so I don't really know.
I can't speak for everyone else. I can't speak for anything else. I'm just saying that me personally, if someone comes to me with a big story about what you said, allegedly Sorrell is doing X, Y, and Z, then I'm going to either write it or find a way to get it published somewhere.
Okay, that's fair enough, but you would have to agree that a lot of this stuff, not necessarily from you, because I don't really know what you get presented with, but a lot of the stuff that is presented to people within the company you work for.
What exactly are you talking about, Jason? So you're saying there's things that get presented that you know of for sure that get presented to Poker Media or Poker News that aren't reported on? So you're mentioning the Sorrell stuff, the Sorrell allegations.
I don't want to make this like a huge deal, but yeah, there's stuff like that where because the player, because the person is sort of prominent within the poker community, they sort of get they sort of get off a little easy. I think the Brian Hastings thing is another pretty good example of that. But there's a few more, but I'm not really in the market of just like outing people that are just
You're in the market of being salty, and I'm in the market of trying at least to open myself up for you to reach out to me, or if someone to reach out to me to make this into a better situation. Like, you can be salty all you want, but I'm going to try to keep doing my job to the best of my ability under whatever sort of circumstances I am or restrictions I have. I do care about what I write, what I talk about, and what I do in this sort of poker media world. So,
See, it's kind of hard for us to even have a discussion as to what's wrong, because I'm not sure what's presented to you specifically or what's presented to someone else within Poker News, or what's not even presented itself.
Well, then this is an open call to everyone listening and watching. Reach out to me if you have a big story. Like, seriously, I'm opening myself up to it. Like, you can find me on Twitter, you can find me on Facebook, and you can find me at almost every single big tournament all year round. I'm always there. I'm always at the biggest buy-ins. I'm always at the biggest events. Like, seriously, it's not that hard to find me.
See, I hope this actually,
Jason, in the future, would you potentially, if you hear about something, are you interested in potentially getting in touch with Remko behind the scenes and saying, hey, why don't you write a piece about this, and then sort of put the test to put that to the test. So you bring him something and see if he puts it out, and then if he doesn't, well, now you know, maybe he's not putting things out.
Yeah, I guess I can do that. The main problem, though, is my view on all these things is if it's not related to me, or if it's not involving my personal business, I just don't really care that much. So if someone wrongs me, then I'm gonna make it hell for them. But if someone's out there fucking other people, then that's their problem.
Oh, that's fair enough.
And maybe that's a bad thing about the poker community, but I would say that most poker players are like that. And the crusade to get people to out each other as scammers, as liars, or thieves isn't really going to lead anywhere, because there are people that have done stuff like this before that have like crawled back into the poker community and are now considered reputable members. And that's the main problem, going back to the Galfond article about basing it on Galfond's reputation, right? Like, reputation doesn't really mean anything to me at this point, because like I've seen people fall from grace hundreds and hundreds of times within the poker community. So it's sort of bad journalistic integrity. I know I'm saying this loud, but it's bad journalistic integrity to allow people to out other people in financial transactions based on reputation alone.
I'll give to you that it's a slippery slope, but I also give to you that it's and that this I've said this way too many times now, but that it's a unique situation where it's Phil Galfond, who's probably top 3 in the world when it comes to reputation.
Okay, Galfond is top 3 in the world when it comes to reputation.
I mean, I feel like we're just circling the wagons right now, boys. We're kind of going back to some things we were already discussing, earlier.
Who are the other two? Who are the other two within the top 3?
I don't know. Maybe you should write an article about it.
I think it's just like a general statement. Without
Yeah, I feel like we've discussed it, and I'm okay to disagree. And I just feel like more can be done to make poker media better going forward. But then it goes back to the point that money is also a thing where there aren't that many poker sites left anymore, and the ones that are have ties to sponsors because that's a way to survive. And if someone's willing to,
actually very happy. Sorry, go ahead. I'm interrupting. Sorry, go ahead.
If someone is willing to pay me, a full-time salary to write all the dirty stories out there, and that's going to be something that I can count on for the next couple of years, then I'll happily take a side gig and write more of those stories. But the reality of the situation is it's just not like that. It's the way the climate is currently. It's not that easy to always do the things that you like to have it done from the Jason Moe perspective.
No, and I agree with that. The main issue, I mean, I'm actually happy that like you sort of agree with a lot of the points I'm making, mostly about how not just Poker News, but like other sites are essentially not real news sites, but affiliate sites for major poker sites or affiliate sites for like live poker rooms or major poker tours. Because a lot of and you agree with this, that a lot of the content that is produced, whether it's like the live reporting or actual articles, is sort of filtered in a way where it never makes the sponsors look that bad.
I think that you're overstating the quantity of things like this happening, but I do agree that there are cases like that out there. And I think that for the most part, we do it to the best of our ability under the circumstances that are presented to us. So
yeah, but you would agree that you're handcuffed at least somewhat as to what you can say if let's say.
I think I'm maybe a lot less handcuffed than other people because of the podcast where I get free range to talk about basically anything I want. But I think if you talk just live reporting, then in that situation there are certain situations where it is a little bit
Yeah,
different.
but the problem with the podcast though is it's like how many people actually listen to it and how many people listen to like the whole thing to get all these tidbits of information, whereas an article or the live reporting is just out there.
I mean, I'm not going to discuss numbers with you, but the podcast is doing really well, and we get a lot of feedback on it, and that does really well. I mean, I'm just give one small example of something that because you keep saying that not a single bad thing gets written when we are under the restraint of being sponsored. I do want to give an example which just popped into my head from the recent Aussie Millions. There was a situation where a drunk and confused guy walked up to the feature table and took a chip from the table while they were filming. He sat down at the table and he walked off to the cashier trying to cash in a $1,000 tournament chip. So this guy was completely like lost it. Allegedly he was not like 100% there, but Crown Security came over right away. They circled the guy. They're trying to like calm him down and explain to him.
Wait, how is this relevant?
No, I'm getting to that. The fact is that this is something that can make someone look bad, like a Crown Casino, where a person can just walk up to a feature table and take chips from there and all that sort of stuff. But I wrote in depth exactly what happened in this situation, and we just published that. We just ran it as a post in the live updates, where someone took a chip from the table at the feature table of one of the biggest events of the year, to 10K buy-in tournament on day 4 or day 5, and we wrote about it, and we just wrote about it from the perspective of this is something that happened in the tournament. So just to give you a little bit of an idea of that, we're not just in the business of covering things up. Like, we are also reporting what's going on.
I mean, it's not much of a cover-up if someone takes a chip from the table and security tracks them down and gets the chip back.
No, but I mean,
That's completely different than like a tournament staff like completely fucking up.
But this wasn't. I'm just saying this wasn't on the live stream. They cut it out of the live stream, but we still wrote it because we felt like we needed to write that story. So that is something that happened that I was personally, because I can only speak for myself. That's something I was personally a part of and that I wrote, and that's just I just wanted to give it a little tidbit to show that it's not all bad.
I feel like that's a really horrible example of going outside the box to show that like the venue or your sponsors or you're not.
It's a small example though. You know, it is a small example. Obviously, we could go back in time. I'm sure there are other examples if we go back and really track down a bunch of different tournament series that have happened, different places. To find
what about the situation like what was it, 2 years? Did Poker News write an article about that? Like Zero Human Zero and Jeans got their computers hacked while they're staying at Arts in Barcelona, the same hotel that's still being used for Arts in Barcelona.
I don't know. I can't tell you off the top of my head.
Like, that should have been a massive, massive, massive issue. Like, poker players leave their laptops around all the time. And if a hotel is... Like, you see the threshold difference between some drunk guy taking a chip off a stack and hundreds of high-stakes players staying at a hotel that may or may not be hacking your computers and stealing money from you when you're playing online poker. That's a huge difference.
September 6, 2013, Poker News. High-stakes poker players allegedly targeted in a laptop scam in Barcelona. And then 4 days later, Finnish computer security company F-Secure confirms sharking attacks at EPT Barcelona. So that's just from me Googling like in 2 seconds. Just wanted to say that.
Okay.
That was written about and covered to the full extent. And I know this is like you love for me to Google this and not find anything because you love to hate like this, but this goes to show that there is actually also coverage out there about these topics. So don't.
And that was kind of my point, by the way, is that I'm sure if we go back and look at these other tournament series, there are going to be other examples of things that are written that aren't necessarily painting these venues in the most positive light. So it's just like off the top of the head, Remko might not know, I might not know. You know, JMO might not know, but if we actually go back and we take a look, you're going to see.
But I think we've sort of reached the end of this discussion because we disagree on certain things, which is fine. And I just want to say that I'm free to do the best to what I can on any future stories, and that's a call to everyone who has something that they want to see discussed or whatever. Come on my podcast or do something like that.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I'm happy that you actually, I'm happy that you actually are proactive in looking for stuff like this.
Yeah, I wish you were more like me.
So I'm not in the poker media, buddy.
No, but just from an attitude point of view, and maybe like I said, that's an open invitation. Just let me know.
All right, boys, guys in the chat, we've had a lot of great comments, and thanks to people in the chat. We're talking about my moderation ability. Listen, guys, I'm not a fucking professional moderator when it comes to freeways with men. Okay?
You did a good job. You did a good job.
This is my second one, so I was sort of enjoying the conversation back and forth. I think at times at the beginning, same thing might have been repeated a few times, but it is what it is. So I hope you guys did enjoy the back and forth. I think that Jason and Remko, I think you guys sort of were able to voice your opinions in sort of person, but in face to each other. So hopefully you guys got a little bit resolved between each other. Hopefully in the future, if you guys have some sort of issue with something, you'll be able to handle it maybe a little bit, I don't want to say better, but maybe you'll be able to handle it a little more peaceful instead of some of the back and forth you guys have had online recently. And obviously everyone out there, if you guys have a subject, a story, something that you think isn't being discussed and you want it to be discussed, hit up Remko, give him the information, and he'll try to make an effort to put it out there. So, guys, any last words you guys want to add at all, or should we wrap things up here?
I'm good. I'm hungry for sushi.
Yeah, I'm pretty good. I think I expressed my point. I hope the poker community doesn't really. How would I explain this? I hope the poker community doesn't really get like the wrong impression of this. Like, the way to counteract scammers is to just be extremely cautious in your own dealings, not necessarily to just out everyone that you see fit.
Jason, let me just say, the words you just spoke mean so much more to everyone than you arguing over this Galfond piece. Like, I think it really helps if you say something like that, because people that listen respect you and will learn from you saying
Yeah,
that. So
and that's why I'm talking about the Galfond piece, is because I have major issues with like something like this being done. Like, I'm usually not that vocal about, or I don't care nearly enough to spend this much time talking about an article like this. But I truly do feel that this is like an extremely poor taste, and it leads to like it was done in his favor, and it leads to a slippery slope where we're judging people based on arbitrary who has good reputation, who doesn't have good reputation, and that's completely based on individual perception of that person.
sure, but you won't disagree with me when I say that in the world of poker, in many cases, reputation is a very important thing, and in some cases, it's even all you have as a player and as a and part of the high stakes community.
True, reputation is an important thing, but reputation is also.
So then Galfond is also putting his reputation on the line, putting an article like this out there.
How is his reputation on the line?
If it's not true, then his reputation is definitely on the line.
Okay, but if the guy doesn't respond and there's no response, or if he's given the opportunity but doesn't write the complete story, then nothing really happens. I don't understand how Galfond is even on the hook for anything here. Like, he doesn't even explain what happens within the article, which is like one of the major issues I had with the article, is that he doesn't explain why the money was given, when the money was given, who was involved. He just said there was a transaction that happened.
All right. Well, I think we've sort of reached the end of this. We're getting back now to.
I'm just getting worked up where I should be more chill. So
J-Mo, that's actually a great question. Why don't you ask Phil about that? Why don't you hit up Phil on Twitter or something like that?
About what?
About that question you had right there. About why you
what exactly happened? I mean, he probably doesn't want to tell me, like he doesn't want to tell anyone else. Right? He says there's other people involved and he doesn't want to like muddle their name or I mean, I don't have a direct line to Phil where I can get inside information from him as opposed to just reading this for everyone. So I'm like as in the dark as everyone else.
Well, the next time I see Phil, which is probably going to be the World Series, I'm going to ask him to be on my podcast, and I'm going to ask him if he wants to further elaborate on the stuff that we have discussed, because I would love to sort of stay on top of this, if you understand what I mean.
Cool. I like that, guys. People watching, I'll be back with another three-way podcast. I think it's going to be a three with me, Kate Hall, and Sam Abernathy sometime this weekend.
Oh my God, that's like the completely different side of this whole spectrum of three-ways.
Listen, man, I knew this three-way was coming with you two. I mean, a Dutch guy and an Asian guy with me. I'm like, listen, I gotta like balance this out. I gotta get two attractive females with me doing a three-way. So it's like the other end of the spectrum of this, boys. So I appreciate you guys coming on. I hope you guys got a little resolved. Hope you guys out there enjoyed watching. If you have any questions for either one, JMO on Twitter at CuntyCakes123. You want to hit up Remko at Remko Rinkema or Remko Media? Which one is
Remko Media, just to put the media in the name, right?
I like it. Remko Media on Twitter. And guys in the chat, much love. I'll be back soon. Actually, I might do a Survivor podcast tonight with Anna Kate because I got to get a recap on episode 2 with her.
Survivor, I just watched that. It was a pretty good episode.
Yeah, I haven't watched it yet with the awards, so I'm anxious to see.
No spoilers, no spoilers.
All right. Guys in the chat, much love. I'm out. Peace out. Remko, Jason, see you guys later.
Thanks, Joe.
Adios.
Adios, guys.